Unsolicited advice.
What you whispering for? Yo, what's unsolicited advice? Take it or leave it. Usually on talk shows or sometimes you see it on reality TV or, even in but mostly in your own life. But you see it on TV a lot. You start seeing generational cycles where people are going through the same stuff that their parents went through or their family went through and stuff. And they get talked about a lot, but you just start seeing people have mental breakdowns about things, or you start figuring out, oh, okay, this is why that person's like this. This is passed down. This is like passed down trauma and cycles of stuff. And, sometimes people don't talk about it. They just hold it in and they don't want to talk about it because they don't want to feel like they have a problem. But to be honest, we all go through generational cycles that, we try to break those generational curses. But it's hard to do. But I'm going to talk about a couple of them, and hopefully, y'all can relate to what I'm talking about, and share some things you're going to if you feel the same. Probably the number one thing though is cycle of abuse. Physical, emotional, sexual, mental abuse often repeat because children start, or as a younger age, you start internalizing most of that stuff as normal. When your family is cussing each other out or talking any old kind of way to each other, you normalize that. When you start seeing them hit on, if you start seeing your dad or your mom hit on each other, you think that's normal. You think that's a way of expressing love or keeping somebody in line. You think that. It's a lot of stuff, a lot of different types of abuse. But when you're experiencing it and you're seeing it at a younger age in your family, you think that it's normalized. You think that is normal because they're doing it. It's like, why else would they do that? That's obviously what we need to be doing. But that is another generational cycle that you have to learn to break as you get older. You start realizing that's not healthy. Neglect, emotional withholding. Parents who grew up emotional, when they grow up emotionally neglected, they struggle to express love or nurture, so they pass down like coldness and distance, distancing to their kids. So a lot of times, as a kid, your parents would do these things and they don't realize they're passing it down to you. If you're not used to knowing what love looks like or nurturing looks like, you're just going to be cold and distant because that's what you're used to. Another generational cycle is addiction and substance abuse. If you have family members that have alcoholism, drug abuse, or just compulsive behaviors like gambling or overeating, it often runs in the family. And it becomes a part of the mechanics of that family cycle. And I would say that might be the most dangerous one because as a kid, I remember seeing it. Like I would see my dad get drunk and my dad and my uncles and just people getting drunk. And I'm thinking, God, this looks like fun because they having a good time. They talking loud, they playing, spades and bid whiz or whatever, or they outside just having a good old time. I'm thinking it's great. I saw some of them doing drugs. I didn't know what that was at the time, but they looked like they was having fun. I remember they would shoot craps outside. They would gamble, talking shit to each other, but, everybody looked like they was having fun. So I didn't think it was a bad thing. As far as the overeating, we all overeat. We all overeat. So that is a cycle of abuse, especially if you come from a family that tends to be obese or big, on the bigger side. That becomes a regular coping mechanism, and it becomes part of the cycle. Another thing that is a generational cycle is unresolved grief and loss. We all deal with it. I've dealt with it. Still deal with it till this day. So any type of death or miscarriage or unspoken tragedies, in life, they create silence in families, and they leave it for later generations, with unexplained sadness. You don't know why you're sad. A lot of things haven't been explained to you. You don't know what was going on. You was kept from a lot of things. And then, it randomly comes up in some type of, somebody in the family gets drunk and they mistakenly bring something up and it's like, what? What happened? Who? How come nobody told me? Yada, yada, yada. So, yeah, there's a lot of unresolved grief and loss in family that you just don't talk about, that you should get together and talk about. It might not be easy, but it's a bridge that you have to cross. Abandonment, inconsistent care, too. So absent parents, due to a divorce, incarceration. Right now, we're dealing with migration, or just abandonment. It can lead to attachment wounds that ripple across the generations. I dealt with abandonment, in a way, and and it affected my life. Even to this day, it's affected it. It's something I try to deal with and I try to work on, but it's hard. It's hard to do. It's hard to work on it, but I try every day. I try every day to work on it. Violence and war trauma. I used to be in the military, and I still have PTSD about it. But violence and war trauma, families with history of slavery, war, immigration, or persecution. They pass down fear and survival-based behavior. And it can come off as cold and rude and just aggressive, and you don't understand why, but for some reason it's just going on and on and on. And what do we all say? Oh, don't worry about them. They just, they're dealing, they just dealing with something, or oh, they just got a thing going on with them. No, there's some things that weren't resolved that you need to talk about as a family. Another one is secrets and shame. So there's a lot of secrets and a lot of shame in families, and that has a generational cycle as well. Hidden pregnancies, pregnancies or abortions that you don't talk about, love affairs, abuse, crimes. So all that secrecy, it fosters mistrust and guilt across generations. I know I keep using the word generations, but every generation of family has so much stuff going on. Nobody's perfect, for one. Nobody's perfect. Everybody goes through things. But there's a lot of stuff that, you don't talk about. Or maybe people didn't bring up around you, or like I said, it's a lot of secrets that are hidden from you. So it's some roads that you have to cross. Mental illnesses, a lot of families like to be silent about it because they're ashamed. Like depression, bipolar disorder. We're just now learning about some of this stuff too. So if you grew up at a certain time, some of the stuff you didn't know your family was going through because they either didn't have words for it or a diagnosis for it. And I talked about PTSD, anxiety, all this stuff runs in people's family. It's a stigma, especially when it's ignored. It becomes a stigma. And it's, like I said, it's definitely something that you have to talk about and that you have to support each other on, just so you can have a better relationship with your family. And of course, you have toxic relationship patterns, codependency, controlling dynamics, or just unhealthy ways, like handling conflict. What you're doing is you're modeling bad behavior to your kids, but to your kids or to the younger family members, because they're watching this. They're thinking that this is what they need to do, or that this is what it's going to be. It's a lot of things that go on that you can't do. You just can't do it. But people do it anyways. But generational cycles are very important to break. You have to learn to break those cycles, because that's the only way you can start having a healthy family, and a healthy life, and peace. Peace is the most important thing. But yeah, good luck to y'all out there. Hopefully, you read this and you hear this, and you get the help that you need, or that you're in the process of healing with your families. It's unsolicited advice, though. Take it or leave it.